Welcome to the Near Life Experience Episode 1 podcast. My name is Anthony Parker, and this is Brett Chulada, my guest slash co-host. We are in Brett's awesome pad in what? What is this?
We are about in the middle, as deep as you can get into the Santa Cruz Mountains, and
this is officially Santa Cruz.
This is officially Santa Cruz, although it's quite far away. We're about a couple miles in, about 600 feet up. We're at a very nice house at the end of a road on 16 acres. We have no visible neighbors. And it's gorgeous out here. This is I've lived here for 2 years, and it is a life-changing situation for my family. This is probably the best environment anyone has ever experienced.
Remind me again how you got this place. How did this come about?
This was a pretty hard one. So I moved down here about 3 years ago, about 3.5 years ago from... I was living in at Fort Ross Vineyard on the Sonoma coast.
You were farmhanding?
I was working actually in service in the tasting room. I was a tasting room attendant, but I lived on it was a 1,000-acre property, so it's about 2.5 square miles of just pristine Sonoma coast, and I kind of lucked out. I ended up there through WWOOFing, Worldwide Workers on Organic Farms, a work exchange program, and
that's what I meant.
And yeah, it was to kind of, I used WWOOF to get out of San Francisco. I was there for 15 years playing music and waiting tables to support playing music and to varying degrees of success.
Was this when you were in Love Times Infinity?
Yeah,
with your brother?
TLXN, the Love Times Knower. I know it's a mouthful.
I always forget the name.
So TLXN, we usually would abbreviate it.
Okay.
Yeah, that was with my older brother Michael, and our friend Gabriel Leese. It was his band. And we were kind of co-headlining, and we both wrote a little bit. It was a little more on his side, but it was a 5-piece rock band, and we did pretty well for...
A few of them were your songs.
Yeah.
I heard your album. I remember. I heard your album, and I think the song I liked the most was the one that I'm pretty sure was your song.
Great.
I remember I got the album from you guys, and I was listening to it a lot, and I was like, oh... There's this one song that I don't know why I thought it was yours, but there was this one song that I got the distinct impression that it was your song.
Yeah, I think that's what eventually didn't quite work with that band, although I learned...
Too many cooks?
Yeah, too many cooks in the kitchen, yeah. I think with two writers, it's kind of a nice idea, but I don't know, it just didn't work for whatever reason. Our voices together weren't... I don't know. I don't want to go into talking bad because I had some great experiences with that band, and I learned what it meant to be in a band and rehearse the appropriate amount of times a week. I think if you're serious about playing music and you're in a band situation, this was before you could get away with doing a lot of stuff on your own, which is what I'm doing now, and you relied on other people to play with, and you compromised on parts, and so this is before you could do all this stuff on your own. So you really you had to form these relationships in these groups, and then there was a scene that was always attached to it that would grow out as well, and it was it's in the real world kind of thing. This was before Facebook or maybe right at the start, there wasn't social media. It was still during a time where you had to get discovered. It was not a meritocracy, not that it is completely now, but it's way more so.
I think it was then too, but it's getting
worse. I mean, back then you still had to be discovered. You had to be chosen by...
And you had to make yourself get discovered by
being
together for a long time.
Yeah, and creating and playing shows and...
Gigging.
Yeah.
Gigging.
And
I saw you guys at the bottom of the hill.
Oh, yeah.
That was a big show. There's a lot of people. That's a prestigious
Bottom of the Hill is
venue.
A great venue. Best live sound in San Francisco for that size club. Bottom of the Hill was terrific.
Loud.
Yeah, loud, but the stage sound was unbeatable. It was great. So many great bands there.
I remember that concert. I remember coming to the city, getting my act together and getting into the city. I was living in Oakland, I'm pretty sure at the time.
Right.
And seeing you guys. Were you in any other bands at the time, or just them?
So just TLXN. So when I first moved to the city it was about the turn of the century, 2000, I kind of restarted the band that I was in from after dropping out of college a couple years in until moving from that area, which I'll talk about in a little bit, which was Sonoma County in Rohnert Park. And that band was Immersed, and that was a 4-piece band that we had about 4 or 5 years. And we lived in A section in Rohnert Park, the friendly city, and there was nothing going on in that town except for our house, pretty much. And it was a very strange time, a very 90s thing. But that was a time where it was important if you were in a band to have a scene around you. Like, no one would consider coming in and supporting you in any real sort of way unless they saw that you were at the center of some energy vortex or whatever. And that was kind of the key. And
Did the house have a name?
It was 270 Allison. I'm changing that in the book I'm writing about the time. But so anyway, so that band was Immersed.
I mean, like the Madhouse or something like that.
No, it was a Madhouse, but it was just 270 Allison. Like when I talk to people from back then and my friends, it's always 270.
Oh, but they knew it as it. They knew the. It wasn't just some. You're not just saying that was the address.
Yeah, it was a little more than an address.
That was his name. Okay,
yeah, when people who are there and friends talk about it, it's very with reverence called 270 Allison.
And this is the subject of the book that you're working on.
Yeah. So let me just finish that thought real quick.
Okay,
so Immersed was that group, and then I took off with a new girlfriend, and we moved to Boulder, Colorado, and some crazy stuff. But we all reconverged 1999 in the Bay Area, and then we rebranded the band called Sad Sad Fun, which was a band name that was thought up towards the end of that previous period, and I wanted to use it, and it was just a really fun band name, and everyone always really liked it, and it would just pop up again and again.
It's a great name. What was what's behind the creation of it? Anything?
Yeah, so Sad Sad Fun is kind of like, if you can imagine it with a comma after the first sad, so like sad, sad, fun. And basically that phrase came about after one of... we had a house party up there towards the end of that period up in Rohnert Park, and we lived in this house next to Prairie Sun Studios. This was the house after 270 Allison, and we had a crazy party at the house, and the sun was coming up, and my brother and I were in the basement, and we were just looking around, and it's just people, piles everywhere, and it was just, it's just that kind of vibe where it's like, man, this is just sad, sad fun right here, So it's kind of within that spirit, and I remember neither of us remember who said it between my brother and I. He'll say it's him, and I'll say it's me.
Of course.
But it stuck like right away. It was just kind of like, I remember I was drawing something or a flyer, and I remember writing it down right away, and we are kind of like, wow, that's really cool, and so that kind of stuck. And so we tried to use that name with a different combination of that band when we all reconvened in the Bay Area, but that was a band that never rehearsed. We didn't know anything about anything. Michael wasn't
in that band.
Michael was in that band.
He was.
Yeah,
he
so
was
it was
in
Michael. It was my
too.
friend Farhad as well.
Right. I was going to say Farhad, but I wasn't sure if I was remembering him name from somewhere else.
Immersed, the band before, was my brother, me, Farhad, and my college roommate, and then housemate Sam Brooks, who lives up in Portland, and he's in a band his project's called Mighty Lotus, and he's a great guitar player. And we're all still in touch, and especially because of the book I'm writing now about that time, I'm using these guys. We have a group text where if we remember any stories or names, we can bounce it off each other. So they've been a great resource. So anyway, Sad Sad Fun as a band didn't work in that first incarnation. We just didn't rehearse. It was a mess. It was just a weird time. Everyone was like... It just did not work at all. I think we had a couple gigs and they were disasters. And so that just kind of got sidelined. And then I was invited to play in Gabriel's band, The Love Times Nowhere, which my brother was already playing in. And so it was a way to kind of get back or get into San Francisco or get back to San Francisco. So I took it and we started rehearsing, and it was kind of a different thing. I'd never been in that situation before. We're rehearsing, 2 and 3 times a week. Just knowing that you really have to stay on top of that and juggling people's schedules. Those guys were way more professional than my brother and I, especially me. And so, we had some scrappy elements, and then we had Stanford music graduate drummers and stuff. It's just like this. It was pretty wild.
Wait. Do you mean that you switched drummers?
Yeah,
That
we had a
you went
few
through a lot of
different drummers. Yeah, yeah.
Isn't that always the way?
You
You
know,
can't pin down a drummer.
it's madness, and the same thing with bass playing too. And this, I think I started playing bass.
Wait, is that what you played for the band, bass, and you sang?
No, so in Love
You
Times
play
Nowhere, I
guitar?
sang and played guitar.
Oh, okay.
And but in Immersed and in Sad Sad Fun, I would switch on bass and guitar, but sing as well.
Who would play bass when you played guitar?
Farhad would play
Oh,
the
okay.
bass primarily, and so I was still kind
Is
of
that his thing, or is he also like a guitar player?
He was a guitar player originally,
Okay.
so yeah. So we switched a little bit more back in the day.
I know I met him at one point, I think, but I don't really remember.
Yeah,
I think
he's
I actually might have jammed with you, him, and Michael in San Francisco in his rent-controlled place that he had.
Yep, exactly.
I might have gone there once and had a little jam with you guys.
Yeah, Farhad's a great friend. He's a great photographer, and he's a film nut. He lives in New York now. I was going to say about that. Yeah, so in TLXN, it was, I was still in the guitar playing frontman singing mode. And, I think I started really taking the bass a little more seriously and playing the drums more in reaction to having to compromise in a band situation. And I think I just kind of wanted to see what I would have done, because I was always thinking, well, what, in my head, trying to give directions and stuff, it's just a stylistic difference. I didn't really understand that back then, but I think I started playing because that's probably how I wanted it to sound to back up my music, but I wasn't assertive enough or conscious enough to really, make that happen. But, being in the city and not being a city person and liking going out, if I wasn't working, I was down in our studio, which is always in a 24 lockout, like Secret Studios, and I would utilize that time and just stay for long periods of time and work on stuff and play drums and play bass, and I think that's kind of how I developed how to just be. So now I'm at a point where I feel pretty confident on those three instruments, on guitar originally and with my voice, because that was kind of the first thing. I think is my main instrument is the voice came, and the guitar, and then blending those two into songwriting, and then picking up the bass and the drums after that, and also a little bit of keys along the way, which is probably the weakest. But being able to do all that, I just am at a point where it is so fun to create music and to try to create that vibe of people playing together, that dynamic, but only with one person. And I think that's sort of the idea behind the novel as well. So the book I'm writing, which I started 3 weeks ago, which is crazy. I've been working on music full-time for about 6 months now. I made the decision to start doing this again after kind of starting and stopping and not really being serious about anything and not having a vision or any direction any way whatsoever for, 10 years, I guess it's been. And I just kind of reached a point where it's like, well, do I do this? Is this what I want to do? Because you kind of have to start doing it. I blew the pandemic. If I was where I'm at now during the pandemic, forget about it. I mean, I would be so much farther along. So having made that decision earlier this year, just all of a sudden, I also with in mind the idea of the Malcolm Gladwell book, Outliers, I think it is, the idea of 10,000 hours. If you put 10,000 hours in, to get really good at anything or proficient in anything, you need to put 10,000 hours into it. And I think I took that to heart. And so I just started, after I made that decision, all I did and all I've done since and will do tomorrow and the next day is work on music. And now there's writing involved, but for 6 months solid, it was not even putting stuff in a computer recording, but just writing songs and coming up mostly on bass and programming drums and keys and filling this little loop pedal up here. This is the new incarnation of the Boss loop station, and it's got like 100 presets, and it's pretty endless, and it sounds great. And so I just started filling this thing up with just beats to play over, and then I'd do different passes at kind of live programming with some drum machines, just iPad drum machines, and really getting into those and learning how to get the best out of them, and then just layering these loops, and then eventually, maybe a couple months ago, they started kind of forming into collections that would work together. Some were all over the place, but then I'd realize, well, that's probably that because I was working on that, and they started pooling up out of this general pool. Then it starts congealing, and then you just kind of take these things out and organize them, and now it's kind of getting more into the detailed work. So this maybe 100 hours of material coalesce into like 3 to 8 minute bits all on that board, which is maybe about 20 pieces altogether, which is about what I think I've written in earnest for my entire time being in bands.
Okay, is the book and the songs you're writing directly related?
Yes and no. So the idea for the book came out of the blue a few weeks ago. I decided to take a walk because I heard that's good for creativity, and it really was. So I took a walk up on the ridge by my house, and I was wondering how. So if this music that I'm making if it's required at some point or there's opportunities to perform it live, and it seems reasonable to put the energy into doing so, I was wondering how am I going to do this? Because the idea of it and what I've been doing is working totally on my own. I'm not compromising with anybody. I'm not being in a band is a lot of work. Getting to know strangers. I don't have friends, and having their styles and juggling schedules, and like with things as the way they are and technology the way it is, you don't really have to do that if you don't want to, and that's very freeing. But if I have an opportunity to, or it's worth it to put something together, and I know that I can. I would need 2 other people who were similar, could play the same variety of instruments, maybe 1 or 2 others, and it's at a point now where if they're good enough players, they could learn those parts and they could go from there. But as long as they learn those parts, then we could do this. So I've never been in that situation before where I would be saying, well, this is what you would have to do, and that's a lot to ask for someone who maybe has their own stuff that they're working on. I mean, those are the kind of people that that their job is to fill that role, a sideman or whatever. That's what it would have to be. But that's not really a concern right now. But the thought of how I was going to do that, all of a sudden I was thinking, okay, it's going to be 2 other people. All right, it's sad fun because it should be a 3-piece. Okay, so it's drums, bass, and guitar and whatever else. And then I was thinking, okay, sad fun. Well, 2 people could dress like emo, like in a black suit and tie, and then one guy could be in a clown suit. And then I thought, oh, that'd be cool. You could draw straws before the gig. Who wears the clown suit tonight, right? And then these ideas just started kind of stacking on each other and getting more and more wild. And at the end of it, it was a 9-year live theater project with divided into like 3-year components. So it was all based around like 3s. I mean, this idea got so nutty, and so it just blended all these genres. Like I had people in costume. I had the lawyer. People were. It was more like in my mind like a World Wrestling Federation mixed with a rock show.
On this walk, you were envisioning this idea. This production you're telling.
Yeah, but based off of how would I pull this off live, and I guess I was just in that state of mind where I let it run away with me. So how am I going to perform this live to a 9-hour live theater genre blending show? And the enormity of it in my mind, like I started writing it down right when I got back, I'm sorry, not 9 hours, a 9-year project.
Okay.
Sorry, a 9-year project where the albums, it just kind of, it went from how to perform this music live in a band situation to kind of a concept performance presentation into a live theater with other characters and actors based on these 3, and then into how would this happen, and is this a theater show? It just turned into this crazy thing, and I liked the idea, but I came home and I remember I just filled like half a notebook of just all these ideas that I had within 10 minutes. for a couple hours, and then I presented it to my roommate. I had him come in, and I sat down and said, "All right, this is what I got," and I read it out to him, and it was humorous to say the least. And then I slept on it, and then the next day, I took the same walk, and then it all became really clear that I started thinking about the characters that I had in mind, and it became clear that this was a book or a novel, because there was potential for storylines. And then it went all the way back to those days in Immersed in Rohnert Park as being a setting for that novel. And I started thinking of all the stories from that time, which truth is stranger than fiction in this case. And I thought there's so much material here. And then based on the theme of wanting to not compromise and wishing that I could just play with two other versions of myself, then that idea came to have a main character split into three. But maybe I'm giving too much of that away as a premise. But anyway, that would be the band. So it would be in that style and in that setting and with that group of people, and all these things fused together, and they would be not specific people. I mean, it started out that way. I'd see someone when I thought about this character, and I thought of making it. But, the more it went on, and this is only 3 weeks old, it just started, these characters started becoming amalgams, and then I thought of patterning them off the tarot deck, because the tarot deck holds all...
getting your your archetypes.
Archetypes, exactly. Like those started forming. I want to use all of these, and I know all these different people, and they all have these kind of similar things, and they're all attached to this.
Right.
And so, just kind of that setting with that idea started giving way to basing that on tarot, including Greek mythology and the idea of eternity. And one of our friends back then, Charles, is a playwright, and he would write his own Greek tragedies, and sometimes would play drums behind him and stuff. So he's always had this little acting troupe on the side, and this is a real thing. And this finds its way into the book as well. And then I found when I was writing out everything I could think of for a couple of days, it felt like automatic writing. There were so many little ideas, and I would, as I was writing, I would kind of put them into context as far as, music history. That this was a time before cell phones, even a time before, the internet had just started. So, it would be interesting for someone who wasn't alive then to read back at this time, which is not that far away, but which was radically different experience than it is now. And, it seems kind of new, but it also feels sort of old, but it also sort of feels eternal in a way. So it's kind of, yeah. There's a lot of layers in my mind.
What, have you written a book before?
I never have written a book before. Mm-mm.
Have you written a short story?
Not really. I've always... I've always written lyrics, and I've always kept, not always, but at times kept a journal, and I've always done a lot of, I used to write a lot of stuff like that a lot more.
Are you writing it down by hand, or are you typing it in your computer?
I've been going through composition books about the same rate as paper towels at this point.
Good.
And
is any of it the actual narrative yet, or are you sort of brainstorming?
Some of it is. Some of it came out as, well, this is clearly this little scene or this,
Okay.
So it's all over the place, and I've had to kind of create this process as I went. So I've set it up to where I start the process every day with drawing 3 tarot cards.
Okay.
And then for myself, I write down what those are. I think about my own life or whatever, but it's more for the purpose of understanding the entire deck.
Yeah.
And which, I'm coming into this pretty blindly, so I don't have a whole lot of, stuff in mind as it is. So I'm kind of learning all these, all these cards, which is pretty much every possible archetype and situation in life. Right. And this is something that's been around for a long time. It's at the root of all games. It's like the oldest parlor game around. And the fact that all the stories and everything are there in these cards is pretty fascinating. What I did learn is that not each card is a person that I could apply towards someone that I knew from that time that I wanted to use as a character. So they're already sort of blending. So a lot of them, Wheel of Time, these are situations rather than just people or archetypes. So I'm still kind of figuring that out, and I don't need 78 characters to attach to each thing, and I think that would limit the potential of what it could be. But I definitely want to have that being a layer in there. And it's the same idea of Greek mythology. There's these different gods, and there's this idea of eternity, and that there's this one story that's been playing out from the beginning of time, and there's archetypes that are evolved.
Wait.
And there's,
if it's eternity, there's no beginning of time. How can there be a beginning of time if it's eternity?
You're right. So if you want to break down the words,
that's one of my thoughts when I think about the possibility that existence is eternal. And when I go down that rabbit hole of, okay, we're spiritual beings living in a meat suit briefly, but existence, consciousness is eternal, that's terrifying. But then the one thought about it that says, well, maybe I'm thinking of it wrong, is when I think it's not just eternity in front of me, but also it's eternity behind me. So that means I've already lived an infinite amount.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm like, oh.
And as far as we know, maybe it's extending into the future as well. It's I mean, who knows? It's anyone's guess, but I mean, there's a lot of clues in.
So far away from the web of all the trouble you eat. All the skin roads down to the endless waterfall. The sunset and the shadows grow so tall. Look where you've landed. You're the king of the canyon. I never knew it could be so wide. You're on trial, but not like before. Leave tracks all the time, of the kind that you lay on the floor. Take it in, you know that it won't last. It's enough just to know it's a gift from which you never asked. Follow the skin roads down to the endless waterfall. The sunset and the shadows grow so tall. King of the canyon. I never knew that she'd be so wide. It's alright. It's alright. It's alright.
know,
So what did
people
they
have been
say
thinking
about it in
this
Greek?
stuff
What did
forever.
they say about it in the Greek
Well, you know, there are
mythology?
gods for different things in life and different qualities of people. In Greek
Right.
mythology, the gods had human qualities as well.
Right.
Uh,
They were vengeful too, weren't
oh
they?
yeah, they were. You know, they were assholes, and yeah, and you know, I'm not a wealth of knowledge about these things, but but I understand that there is, you know, if you think about, you know, there's only a few true dramatic situations. You know, there is really just one story, and it's the story of humans on this planet, and there's a lot of stories. You know, made up of these basic components. But if you have enough components, there's infinite variations as far as the stories are, but there are these basic things at work at all times. And I think that's kind of I don't know, maybe that's the trick with creating art and music, is you're sort of nodding to that, or giving your 2 cents or contribution. You're saying, oh, yeah, well, this was my take on this that we're all trying to have takes on.
And figure out what the hell's going on. It always blows me away when I meet someone who doesn't have any of these thoughts. There are lots of people out there. You talk to people and they'll be like, "What?"
Yeah, it's crazy. Not everyone wants to think in those terms, or
I don't want to think in these terms.
but yeah,
I'm compelled to think in these
Yeah,
terms.
that's
I can't
true.
stop them
Yeah.
from happening.
Yeah,
I would love to be. I wrote a whole song about how
ignorance is
why
bliss.
can't I be like one of these people who's just like doesn't ever think about any of this stuff.
Yeah,
Never
well,
thinks
you
about
know, yeah.
infinity. Never thinks about how the universe could possibly exist.
Yeah.
Why is it that there's anything, and how could you ever even explain why there is anything? Is it possible to explain why there is anything?
Well, no, but that's the fun of it, because it's fun to try to figure out, because you're never going to figure it out. If you're trapped in this meat suit, you're trapped in time. So you have this point of view.
Maybe that's what it is.
So
trapped in
we're
time.
always trying to figure stuff out, like with science and everything else. We're always constantly reaching into that void to try to understand what the fuck is going on. But you know, nobody knows for sure. No one's come back to tell us. So, but there's a Greek term, homo faber, which means man the maker. And I think our nature is to create things and to come up with ideas and to come up with better versions of those ideas. And that's just our natural state of being. So it's fun for me, and terrifying as it is for you, to think about these things. I think it's fun to just take guesses as far as what's going on. Who knows? I know that I'm not going to figure it out.
I do take guesses. That's I guess you
and
could
you know
say
what?
I
I'm
think
not
that's
going
fun.
to. I can say, I can have my own viewpoints and opinions and ideas, but I'm not going to stick to them, and I'm not going to die on the hill of them, because I don't know anything for sure. Nobody does, and anyone who clings on to their idea or wants to hold on to that stuff, like, that's just not the right approach. I mean, isn't it fun to just consider another viewpoint without having to invest emotion into it, or to guard your opinion at all times? You know, why? What are you clinging to? Not. It's more fun to not know and to guess. You know?
Well, and that's it's funny. It's funny you say that, because one of my biggest fears in the world is to actually learn the truth.
Yeah, well,
One of the scariest, just as ironically, the ultimate paradox is that I cannot stop trying to understand what the nature of reality and all of these questions, what it all actually is, what is actually going on here. Yet at the same time, I'm terrified of learning.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what if you did learn? Then what would you do? What would you do then? Oh, I know. I get it. Maybe that's what happens, you know, when we ditch the meat suit for a second. Maybe it's like, oh, that's it.
Well, that's what people who have had near-death experiences say, but they can never remember it. They can never grab back onto the feeling once they're back in the meat suit. They can't explain it. They're like, I wish I could explain. When you watch videos of people talking about near-death experiences, they're always like, I can't explain. Everything happened at once. everything was more real than real.
Well,
But I can't
yeah.
explain it.
I mean, it's like trying to explain a psychedelic experience. It's impossible, especially to someone who hasn't had that experience. I mean, you try to explain DMT to somebody, I mean, you can't even do it for yourself. It's like a dream to try to remember that stuff. I suspect, and I feel like it's been corroborated that maybe like when we go, that maybe that when you're experiencing that world, maybe that is what we go to. We're just kind of seeing what we're going back to, and then when we're there and we're without the meat suit, we're like, oh yeah, and then we go another round. Maybe it's entertaining. I got the sense not too long ago on my birthday a couple weeks ago that I wasn't alone in my room. And it was in the morning, and I talk out loud to myself sometimes, but I really felt like I was answering something, and it felt like more than a thought. And I was kind of like, is someone there? I could just kind of felt a weird thing, and it kind of led to a realization that this was my thought. It was that I am this meat suit, okay, or this incarnation, and that I'm like a ride in some weird carnival, and I am available for people who have passed on and souls to come in and experience it again and look through your eyes and experience that again. And then that kind of went a little further, like, well, maybe we're carrying all our relatives around and they've all passed on. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to go back and scoop back behind.
They're looking through our eyes too.
Yeah, as far back as we can remember.
So my consciousness is not the only consciousness that's peering through this specific meat suit.
Maybe not, and it might not even. There might not even really be a you. You might just be the combination of all of your relatives. But if you take that further, it's like, okay, I can imagine. It's easy for me to imagine maybe a few generations of people hovering in the background, wanting to peer in and get a look-see. But if you follow that logic, you have to accept the fact that those generations go back, to the ends of time. And if that's the case, then we really are all one thing. And so everything that's looking out through your eyes, this is just with this idea, mind you. This is not, I'm not claiming this to be real, but just that means everything that's ever been is looking through your eyes at itself through somebody else's eyes. I mean, if we are all one, then yeah, if we're all related and we're all, then it goes back to one thing.
And this is the new question that I've had for the last couple of days, or maybe longer than that. What does that mean, one? When we are all one, but what the fuck does that mean?
When I think of it, I think of like
one mean?
Think of like a tree, and then we're like fruit, and we're fruiting, but we're peopling. That's what I've heard that makes sense to me. Is we people. We're peopling. So, but it had to have started somewhere. So,
well, yeah. I mean, my quote unquote spiritual belief is that we are the source looking through it. The source is our consciousness. Our consciousness is God. It comes from the source of everything.
Yeah.
And really, all there is consciousness. There's no matter. There's no space. It's just consciousness. Mm-hmm. And all of this is a show that our consciousness is putting on for us.
This is a show. This is God trying. This is God right now talking to itself, having fun, trying to figure itself out.
Right. And there's a part of me that finds that terrifying.
Yeah. You're right.
People talk about it. All these spiritual people, we're all one. Isn't that awesome? And I'm like,
no.
Okay.
No, that's terrifying.
Terrifying.
How are you supposed to masturbate now when you know all your dead relatives are watching all the time? This is a problem.
I was thinking more that my brain takes it to this idea that we don't want to get closer to enlightenment, because if everything becomes enlightened, then we cease to be able to pretend we're not one anymore, and then we're just one and alone in the universe for eternity.
Then you've figured it out, and then it's no fun anymore.
So then maybe that's when the universe implodes in, and then it explodes back out to a new Big Bang.
Yep. It puts the cards back together and it reshuffles them out.
I figured it all out. I got to start over now.
Yeah, the Big Bang's like you got your deck right, and it's like, and then it makes all these combinations, and then it goes back out the other end, reshuffles itself, spreads out again, a new game. But who knows what's around that? I mean, there you go.
Well,
and that's terrifying.
When people, I don't know, when I was young, I believed in the idea of seeking enlightenment and all of that
Yeah.
stuff. I believed in all of that. Like, you're supposed to be spiritual and seek enlightenment, yada yada, and do all this stuff. But then I was like,
It's a big
what
industry now.
if according to the spiritual perspective, we're infinite beings. If we're infinite beings, why do we have to seek enlightenment? Why do we have to try and get better at all? We have infinite amount of time, a never-ending time, to keep doing this over and over and over again and get it right when we fucking feel like getting it right. And what does any of it even mean? So I'm like, why do we this idea of we're here to learn? I mean, learn, yeah, okay, that's a natural byproduct of living, but we're here to improve ourselves and get enlightened. Well, improve ourselves, yeah, as far as hurting fewer people because you can have a better time.
Yeah.
But we're not. Do we want existence to end? I've heard people like, oh, I want to transcend to a higher state. Okay, well, whatever the fuck that is.
Yeah, I mean, spirituality is not supposed to be a competition, but we're in a
It
time where
feels like
there's
it
such a
is.
huge industry and these things attached, so people,
Have turned it
have
into
these
that.
experiences where, very personal, powerful experiences where they do experience we are all one as more than a concept, as something they experienced, and then they make the mistake maybe of thinking that it's them and that they have to show other people or something, and they don't understand that that's just one. I don't know, man. It's weird.
But people who've had the near-death experiences have liked it. That's one thing that makes me feel
Right.
good.
Yeah. Mhm.
They've, for the most part, by and large, they've said it was amazing, and I fucking loved being one.
Yeah, and
with
sometimes
everything.
they were not okay to be back. They were like very disappointed
Very much
to
so.
be back.
They didn't want, and that gives me hope
Hmm.
because I my biggest fear, my biggest deepest fear, is that I'm going to discover what the reality of nature is, and it's going to be awful. And the truth is, and my biggest fear is that the real reason why we incarnate in human form is because it's the only time where we can go to sleep and not be aware of anything. And we can pretend we don't know the truth for a while. And that
Yeah.
when we die and learn the truth, it's ultimately awful.
Yeah, maybe that's why our dead relatives are
And
so
we
fucking
want to
into
go back to life.
Yeah.
We want to return to this state
Yeah.
where we're living. That's my fear. Of course, the people would say, oh, no. The spiritualists would say, oh, no.
Yeah,
But- and
maybe
the people who've had near-death
maybe it's
experiences-
reversed like that,
The people who've had the near-death experiences have loved it. They've described it as being amazing and blissful.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody's favorite person these days, Joe Rogan, he says this about psychedelics, and I always liked this idea, and he believes, or he's whatever Joe Rogan believes from moment to moment, but he believes that because they talk about when you take DMT, or they talk about how the brain naturally releases DMT, although they don't know for sure. They say they think they do because it does in mice. Right.
Yeah.
And they say, well, that's proof that DMT that it's all fake, that it's not real or whatever, which is stupid.
Yeah.
But Joe Rogan says, well, what I think, and I agree with him, maybe, and insofar as I believe my belief, I agree with him that DMT opens the door that allows your spirit to separate from your physical body. It opens a portal so you can see, or not even get out, but see out.
Yeah.
And because you ultimately with DMT, and maybe you might know better than me, there's stages. Not most people who do it don't have a breakthrough because
Right.
it's too scary, because you need to take 3 hits of the stuff
Yeah.
to break through, apparently.
And it's very difficult to
And
do
it's
because
very
it's
difficult
so
to have
fast
the courage
acting.
because
Yeah.
you're so freaked out after the second hit.
Yeah.
After the first hit, you're freaked out. After the second hit, you're super freaked out, and you think your brain is broken. But the people who took the third one,
Yeah.
they go like poof,
Yeah.
and suddenly they're in another realm,
I,
playing with digital whatever.
Yeah, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. With my experiences, I'm not sure I've had that breakthrough, but I certainly like it. DMT had the effect of forcing me to reconsider everything that I thought or believed to be true. Like, it was all of a sudden, it was like,
That's pretty good.
I was like, you know what? I don't know. Yeah, and that was very clear.
I did a different kind of DMT, and for me, it was the most horrific experience.
Was it the
of my life.
5-MeO?
Yes.
Yeah,
I did that stuff.
Never tried that.
And it was
what is the difference? Have you done regular DMT?
No.
Okay.
But I mean, I know based on what I've heard, because I did a lot of research into it after the experience, because
Okay.
it shook me so much.
You knew nothing
And
about it beforehand?
Minimal.
Okay.
I knew minimal about it, and but people who compare and contrast, who have done both, say basically say that DMT, that's classic DMT, classic whatever, because 5-MeO's been around just as long, I'm sure. It sort of brings you somewhere, almost physically. Like I think I've even the people described feeling like they were there, their body was there, almost. And then you have these visuals, you see these fractals, and then you meet these beings, and they're these blah blah blah.
Did you
5-MeO
meet
DMT?
beings?
No.
Oh, you're talking about regular DMT.
That's regular DMT.
Okay, yeah, okay, gotcha.
That's the the machine elves.
Yeah,
or
it's
whatever
more like high-powered mushrooms, very visual.
Well,
of that
and
quality.
they take you to another realm, and
Yeah.
the people there talk to you and
Yeah.
tell you things like,
Yeah.
where have you been? Are you done with your little trip on Earth?
Welcome back.
Welcome
they're
back,
all really sarcastic, and people have been seeing the same things for
same thing.
years and years and years. And this goes back to the idea of eternity. It's like, well, this is something that's there all the time, but then we come out here trapped in a body, and we're trapped in this
and we
time.
see the time loop. We see the time.
Yeah. So that's the kind of the Rogan idea of the
Right.
portal. Then okay, yeah.
5-MeO.
Less visual, right?
5-MeO is less visual. For me, it was just like I was like in this rocket going light speed with light fractals all going around me at light
it's like
speed,
motion
and energy just going through
Does it
my
feel
body.
like more like a nitrous oxide kind of like maybe backbone to it, sort of that?
Maybe you could describe that in some way. It's hard for me to remember exactly because I don't want to remember.
Yeah.
It was what and what
you
I've
don't have the
heard-
context to remember, really.
Well, the problem is that with 5-MeO DMT especially, because I think with NN, if you take the 3 trips, your hits, you're gonna have that breakthrough probably. Yeah. But with 5-MeO, you have to what's it called? You have to let go.
Yeah.
You have to let go.
Right.
If you can't let go, you're going to freak out. And I couldn't let go.
Oh, okay.
I could not let go. I know it. I tried.
And it was
surrender.
I
was saying surrender. Yeah, I don't do it once. I'll never do it again.
You were saying surrender because you remember trying to tell yourself
I was trying to get myself to surrender, and I couldn't surrender. I realize in retrospect that maybe I could have just kept breathing, and I would have I would have naturally started to surrender. I've heard other people say that it starts like you're shot out of a rocket, but it takes you somewhere, and you have to be patient and be able to just keep breathing while it takes you there. Otherwise, because what I did when I was like, this is too scary, I don't know what's going on, this is too scary, I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Fuck you" to the person who was who was the administrator who did the whole thing. It was his group, this thing he has. It's like a society, and you get emails, and you go and you do it if you want to try it. You get sponsored in to get to try it. Someone who's in has to sponsor you in to try it sometimes.
Okay, it's a little culty, yeah.
And yeah, but it was what I had heard. Actually, it was on Joe Rogan's show. He was the one who said to the guy, because this other guy, who's this really cool older guy who talks about stuff, really cool stuff, he did it, and he said his description of it was identical to mine.
Okay, yeah.
I was like, yes, that is how I felt. It was terrifying. And Joe Rogan was like, well, my understanding is you have to it takes you somewhere. You have to wait till you get there.
Yeah.
For me, I couldn't. I pulled myself out of the trip.
It's so
I
startling.
started screaming and yelling, and I remember the fabric of time of life going. I saw it rip.
Yeah.
When I yelled, "Fuck you!" I saw the fabric of time rip around me, and suddenly I was back in the room.
Yeah.
But I was still tripping balls. but I was back in the room.
When I've looked into 5-MeO, that's some of the experiences I hear a lot is people just they come out punching, they're just wigging out because they can't let go for whatever reason. And that sounds terrifying
well,
to me.
Adam, what's another Adam? There's a lot of YouTubers named Adam. He does he's great. He does the channel where he does all psychedelics. He talks about his favorite is DMT. He says that surrendering to DMT and to the universe when it's DMT, surrendering to that experience is like letting yourself get raped by the universe.
Yeah. Okay.
He says that's what it feels like when it's happening.
Yeah.
You have to surrender back and allow yourself to be just raped by the universe, and that's why it's so hard. Mm-hmm. He says this is why it's so hard. This is why most people can't do it. You have to be able to do that, and I couldn't.
You know, I had the opportunity to. I was invited to take part in an ibogaine ceremony in October.
I know of it.
Yeah, it's
a lot of people use that to get off of hard drugs.
Yeah, I mean, people even say that it eliminates like opiate withdrawal, and that's insane. I decided not to go about doing it. I've never had that experience before, and I've never done ayahuasca. But from what I hear, they can be like total resets, which sounds amazing. But my issue with it, and I probably would have done this if I didn't start working on this book, because I just don't know. And I tried to find the answer when I was given this invitation a few weeks ago, because I'm afraid that I love the potential benefits of it, and for my life, that is pretty significant. Like I feel like I could get a lot out of that from where I'm at, but I'm afraid that reset might include that cleaning of the slate might wipe away all these characters and ideas that I have in my mind right now, which kind of require some dark humor.
I would agree with you there.
And I don't want them to go away. Like
don't do it yet. Wait.
Thank you so much, because I could not find the answer in there, but
don't do it yet.
I feel like I have something.
Do it eventually.
Exactly.
Do it eventually.
I'm not saying no, but not right now, because I don't want to take the chance.
You're also feeling a lot better right now.
Yeah.
You're also feeling a lot better, and I would wait. And it's not to impugn ibogaine at all.
Not at all.
But it's you're right. I feel that way too. Like right now, I know in my life, I'm like, I want to go deeper. But I'm on a roll with something that I'm doing that I'm excited about. I don't want to fuck with that.
Yeah,
I don't want to change it.
I love the idea of a reset with my consciousness. That sounds relieving. It sounds totally worth any of the trouble and any of the fear that's attached to it. I mean, that's not a decision to be taken lightly. Yeah,
I think you'll know it. And that's the other thing. That's another important thing. I don't know, but I don't see. The thing is, for me, my experience was it had to be the way it was. It changed things in my life. Mm-hmm. Even though it was terrifying, I had some major epiphanies and breakthroughs about my behavior, about myself, and
absolutely.
And my wife says that to some degree it led to us being able to have our child.
Wow.
So because of the changes that happened in me, and it also allowed me to. I needed some time off of marijuana, and it kicked me out. I couldn't touch marijuana for 2 years. 2-3 years. I didn't touch it. It's like I'm not gonna, because I was like, if I touch that, it's gonna bring me right.